The second part of our study guide has solving polynomials on it. We're going to solve them two ways. We're going to do them with square roots up here at the top, and then we're going to do them with the quadratic formula down here at the bottom. For the square roots, the first thing you have to see is we only have x squareds there. We don't have anything else like these x squareds and x's. So when you just see one of those, that's when you know you're going to do it square root method. So the first thing to do is get that x squared by itself. So work everything else to the other side. So I'm going to move this negative 10 to the other side by adding it. So I'm going to cancel it out. Then I have 10x squared over here equals 480. Our next step would be to divide by that coefficient right there. Divide by that 10. And when I do that, I get x squared equals 48. So we're almost done with this. We have to get this to say x though, not x squared. So our last step is the square root. So we're going to take the square root, and we're going to get x is equal to positive and negative, but we can't say what the square root of 48 is. It's going to be a decimal, and what I want you to do for these is simplify the radical instead of giving me a decimal. So I'm going to do some side work here. So I've got the root of 48, and to simplify this, I need to make a factor tree. So I'm like, what times what equals 48? So I've got 4 times 12. That's a good start, which means I get 2 and 2. Those are prime, so I'm going to circle them. 12 is not prime, so I'm going to keep breaking it down. I'm going to do 4 and 3. 3 is prime, 4 is not. So I'm going to break that down a little bit further to 2 and 2. So when you simplify your radicals, if it has a partner, it gets to go outside the radical. If it doesn't have a partner, it's going to stay inside. So I see a pair of 2's, another pair of 2's. So we're going to multiply those together outside, and then a leftover 3 inside. So our final here would be 2 times 2, 4, root 3, except we've got to go plug this back in. We have that plus or minus that we always have to do when we take a square root and get plus or minus 4 root 3. Or another way of saying that, positive and negative 4 root 3. The second one we're going to do is right here. And we're going to start by getting rid of that 3. Now you might want to boom boom here so you don't lose your negative. That negative belongs to the 4x, not to the 3. And then I can subtract the 3 to the other side. So I have negative 4x squared equals negative 88. So it's my 85 minus another 3. Now I can divide by that negative 4. Gone. And I've got x squared equals positive 22. Our next step is still to take that square root. But this one, we go x is equal to positive and negative. Don't forget that step. We don't want to forget half our answers. We go over here to simplify root of 22 on our side work. And the only things I get are 2 and 11. They're both prime. So because I don't have any pairs in there, there's no way to simplify this radical. We're going to leave it as the root of 22. So that would be my final answer for that one. For number 3, it's almost solved for us. All we have to do is get rid of this 5 by dividing. And when I do that, I get 32. Next up, take the square root. So I get x is equal to positive and negative. Once again, I don't know what the root of 32 is. So I'm going to go over here and simplify on my scrap paper. So I've got 8 and 4. That's where I'm going to start. Neither of those are prime, so I'm going to break them down further. I get 2 and 2, both prime. And then I get 4 and 2. And then I've got to break that 4 down just a little bit more, 2 times 2. So when I'm writing my answer, my simplified radical, if it has a partner, it goes outside. If it has a partner, it goes outside. And if it doesn't, it stays inside. So I'm going to put these back together. That's 2 times 2, 4, root 2. But don't forget that because we took a square root, it's going to be positive, negative 4 root 2. And that would be our final answer for that one. All right, our next one, number 4. We've got to add this 5 to the other side. So I get n squared equals 16. I go to take my square root. And I don't have to do a factor tree this time because we know what the square root of 16 is. It's a perfect square. So go ahead, when it is a perfect square, just tell me what that is. You don't know factor trees needed there. So plus or minus 4. Now let's go on to our quadratic formula section. I've given you 3 problems, and our directions say to write as a whole number, a fraction, or a radical expression, whichever one is going to fit this one best. So let me give it some room. I'm giving you your quadratic formula right here. So when I'm referring to A, B's, and C's, that's what I'm talking about, where I'm plugging in. And that will be given to you on your test as well. So before I get started with number 5, 2, 2, 12, I hope you recognize there's a GCF there. We could start with this simpler. So I'm going to take out a GCF of 2 and start with x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0 instead of the original 1. That's just to make it easier on us. If you don't do that, you're still going to get the right answer. You're just going to be working with a lot bigger numbers. So now I'm going to say, what is A? What is B? What is C? For this one, A is our ninja, 1. B is our ninja, 1 again. And C is this negative 6 right there. Make sure they're in order, so it's x squared, x, then a number. So now it's time to plug this A, B, and C into our quadratic formula. So I've got negative B, so I've got to be right here of 1. So I'm going to say negative, so x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of B squared. Go ahead and do that in your head. So B squared is 1 squared, which is 1. I'm not skipping that step at all. It's just 1 squared was 1. Minus 4 times A times C. Here's your trick. That was the negative 6 for your C, so don't put your negative here. Put it over here. Change that to a plus now. And it's all over 2A. So 2 times 1. So a lot of students are like, where do I start? You've got to start right here with the 4AC and get that down to 1 term. So we really have 1 plus 4 times 1 times 6 is 24. So in that square root, I have altogether the root of 25. So that's the 1 plus the 24. So it's a little side work we're going to do. And then I'm going to fill in the rest of the information here. I'm dropping it down. And then I'm going to say this 2 times 1 is just 2 instead of writing the rest of that. Now you can't stop there. And the reason you can't stop there is you can actually take this root of 25. So square root of 25 is 5. So we have negative 1 plus or minus 5 all over 2. And you still can't stop there because we can keep solving that. That's 2 different problems that we know how to solve. So I'm going to break this up into the 2 things. We've got negative 1 plus 5 divided by 2 and negative 1 minus 5 divided by 2. So if you're wondering where that came from, it comes from here. Instead of saying plus and minus together, we're going to say the plus and then we're going to say the minus, and we split it up into 2 different fractions. So for my first one, negative 1 plus 5, that's 4. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So x equals 2. For this one over here, negative 1 minus 6, that's negative 6. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. And you're done. The quadratic formula finds you your solutions right away. For number 6, got to watch out a little bit. We've got a 7 over there. It doesn't say equal 0 like our first one. So the first step is to get rid of that 7 by putting it on our other number. So we're going to subtract it. And so I get 2x squared minus 7x plus 3. So that was the 10 minus the 7 is that 3 right there. Now it equals 0, so now I can use my quadratic formula. So my A for this one is 2, my B is negative 7, and my C is positive 3. So let's plug this right in. I've got x is equal to negative b, but my b's already negative. So negative, negative b, we're just going to say positive 7. Those 2 negatives are going to cancel out. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. Do this in your head. Anything squared is going to be positive. So 7 squared is 49. We don't have to worry about the negative for that one. Minus 4 times a times c. So I'm plugging those right into place. And then in the denominator, we've got 2 times a, so 2 times 2. So let's do this 4ac, get that all together. So 4 times 2 times 3, that's 8 times 3, which is 24. So I've got 49 minus 24, and that's another 25. They're not all at 25. Those just two happen to be 25. So 49 minus the 24, 25. And we said in our last example that when we see the root of 25, that we have to actually take that because it's perfect square. We know what it is. So we've got 7 plus or minus 5 all over 4. So we're going to break that up into our two pieces again. 7 plus 5. So remember 7 plus 5 is 12. Divide by 4, which is 3. And then the other one, 7 minus 5, that's 2 over 4. Don't leave it like that. Sometimes decimals are okay. In my directions here, though, I've said whole number, fraction, or radical expression. So let's simplify that fraction instead. So 2/4 is 1/2. So 0.5 if you put it as a decimal, but our direction said as a fraction. Last one. Number 7, not solve for 0 again. I need to move this negative 8x in between my 4x squared and my 3. So whenever you switch the side, make sure you switch the sign. So I've got 4x squared plus 8x plus 3 equals 0. So the reason we did that, it's called descending order. We have to get our exponents going downhill like that. So now I've got an a, b, and c. So I'm going to write those up here. A is 4, b is 8, and c is 3. So let's plug this right into our formula. So x is equal to negative b, so negative 8, plus or minus the square root. b squared, do that in your head real quick. 8 squared is 64, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a. So I've plugged in all those places right into where I was supposed to with the variables. So now I'm going to start right here with the 4ac. And 4 times 4 times 3, that's 48. So I've got really up here, the 64, I've kind of ran out of room right here. That's 64 minus 48 in that root, which is really the root of 16. So let me rewrite this whole thing. Plus or minus root 16 all over 2 times 4, that's 8. Perfect square, once again. We've got the root of 16, so we've got negative 8 plus or minus 4. So the square root of 16 is 4. Divide by 8. It's time to split this up into what our two solutions are. So I'm going to do them up here. If you want to split them out and write it all out, please do. I've got negative 8 plus 4. That's negative 4. Divide by 8. As a decimal, that would be negative 0.5. But I asked for simplified fractions, so I'm going to write instead negative 1/2. So I'm going to simplify that fraction a little bit. Then over here, I'm going to say negative 8 minus 4. That's negative 12. Divide by 8. So we're going to have to simplify that just a little bit more. These are both divisible by 4. So I'm getting negative 3 over 2. If you wrote that as a decimal by accident, that is negative 1.5.